Hi everyone, I recently got asked the question on how to calculate business days between two dates. So initially I thought it probably wasn't possible, but couldn't help myself and had to give this a shot. Now this is something I've just put together. It comes with no warranties, no guarantees, and no support, but I think it's a good example to show you the power and flexibility of Nintex new responsive forms. So the way I do this is very similar to another video of mine where we calculate the first Monday of the month. Now, if you haven't watched that, I'd certainly recommend you go and watch that. If you're not familiar with or comfortable with advanced formulas and calculations, I'd say probably watch some of my other videos first. If you're game, keep watching. So first we have two controls, start and end date, and we've got a couple of calculations so I can do my debugging. Now if I come to preview and I say I've defaulted the dates to the 1st of February and the 5th of February just to make it easier so I can calculate it. We've got the 1st and the 5th, and what we see is the date difference of my calculation is 5 days. However, the standard date diff function actually returns 4. And that's important because when you see my formula, you'll probably ask the question, why do I keep adding 1 to these dates? And that's pretty much the reason why. The date diff gives me 4. And you can see I've got business dates between days is 5. Now, that's a simple example because it doesn't pass a weekend. So if I then come here and I say, well, rather than Monday to Friday, I'm going to put Monday to Wednesday. So now it's saying, well, the date difference is 10 days, standard date diff is 9 days, but I'm actually saying 8 days. So if we start on the Monday, the 1st, and we come into here, we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I'm including the Monday through to the Wednesday. Now, how do I go about doing that? Okay, so first let's have a look at the variables I've got set up. So as I mentioned before, the date diff, the standard date diff is a function where it says, you give it a parameter of saying total days, hours, minutes, weeks, months, whatever it might be, and then you give it a start and an end date. And that's where we come back and it says, well, the standard date diff is, well, 4 days here. And I was like, well, a standard working week, Monday to Friday is 5 days, so I actually add the extra 1 on it. And that's how I got my second variable, which is difference of days. And so I say date diff, total days, start date, end date, plus 1. And that was just me just sort of doing some debugging. Now, then came the more complicated part, which is this formula. Now, when I click on this, it takes a little while to open because it's a very complex formula. And every time we build something, we need to validate all of the properties, all of the calculations, everything in there. And it's pretty complex. As you can see, it's only about 20 lines long, but it's about 200 characters wide, or probably more. So it's a pretty complex formula. So how did I actually come up with this formula? Well, I built an Excel spreadsheet to figure this out. So now I knew that if it was greater than 7 days, or it's a week, you're always going to subtract 2. So then it came down to, well, how many weeks is it and how many weekends do I subtract? And we'll come to that in a moment. It was really the problem of, if it's under 7 days, what do I do? Because there's all these different permutations here. So what I calculated was, let's say if it's Monday and it's a 7-day difference between Monday to Monday, Monday to Sunday. Now I need to subtract 2 for Saturday and Sunday. Now, different example. Maybe it's Wednesday and it's a 5-day date difference. Now, we've only got 3 more working days left, but you've selected Wednesday and 5 days to be Saturday, Sunday. So again, I need to subtract 2. Different example. Let's say the date difference is 1 day and it's a Thursday. Well, you're going to get 1 day because it's only that day. However, if you selected Saturday and you've only selected Saturday, I still need to get rid of that Saturday. It's not a working day. Same with Sunday, but Saturday is different because if you selected Saturday and it's 2 days, I've got to subtract 2, and again, otherwise it's 1 on Sunday. So it's always helpful just to map out your thoughts in, let's say, an Excel spreadsheet or something like Visual Studio, for instance. So I use Visual Studio Code. You could use Sublime Text, you could use Notepad if you wanted to, but this is a great way just to get your thoughts out before coming into, where am I? This area here, because the box is a little bit small. Sometimes I might start here and copy things out and build it somewhere else. But so this is where I start working it out. Now let's talk through my formula here. It doesn't look too complicated because I broke it down in this Excel spreadsheet, which made it a lot easier to understand. So first, as I was saying before, if it's multiple weeks or more than 7 days, or as you can see here, date diff, total weeks, start date to end date, it's not equal to 0, then I need to go and calculate how many weekends to remove. So how did I do that? I said, so that's checking if it's more than 1 week basically. So date diff total days form start date to end date plus the extra one that we lost. Now I'm subtracting something from that total period that you've selected in the calendars. What I'm doing here is I'm doing 2 times and then looking at the total number of weeks. So date diff total weeks, start date, end date, figuring out how many, very similar to this one up here, calculating how many weeks have you got. And let's say I've got 2 weeks, then it's going to calculate 2 weeks times 2 equals 4, and the total period is whatever it might be, and I subtract 4 from it. So let's say it was 2 weeks, so you get 14 days in 2 weeks, and this is coming in at 2 weeks. Times 2 is 4, so 14 days minus 4 equals 10 working days. So that's just your basic, just get rid of all of the weekends pretty simply if you're over a week. Pretty straightforward, although it doesn't look that straightforward, but once you play with formulas a bit longer, you'll probably get the hang of it. Now this is wrapped in an if statement. Now the first section of an if statement, if you're not familiar with it, look, I will show you this just quickly. There are videos that I have done about this, but basically if you go if else, and it's got a bunch of syntax in here, but let's go if else in here. So we go if else, and let's say if else Boolean condition, so you try and check if something's true or false. If it's true, then it's going to do something. If it's false, it's going to do something else completely. So test or terms agreement, thank you, or you must agree to the terms. It's either going to give me some sort of output there. So let's go back to this one and go back to my formula. So it's always wrapped in if else, the condition. If it's true, do one thing. If it's something else, do another thing. So this first if statement comes in here. Oops, where are we? Comes in here. Checks for the operation that I'm comparing against, and then it says, okay, if that's true, go and figure out how many days I need to remove from the total allocation period. If it's under a week, then we're doing the rest of this because it's like a fallback and says, okay, but now I'm also putting another if statement. Now this is only subtracting for 2 days. So if I look back at my Excel spreadsheet, I'm calculating these guys and all these guys in here. So the first thing I'll notice is a bit weird. I go total days, start date, end date, plus 1, so for the full period. Now I'm always going to subtract 2 if it's equal to or greater than 7. Always subtracting 2 because it just makes sense. If we look back at our spreadsheet, always subtract 2. Monday to Sunday, always subtracting 2. Now the rest of it starts to follow a fairly standard pattern. So date div, total days, start date, end date, plus 1. If it's greater than or equal to 6 and today is Tuesday, so I do a format date, getting the start date and doing DDDD, and checking if it's Tuesday, then it's going to subtract 2 days, which is the true statement. So if any of these conditions are true in the top part, the bottom part's going to go, okay, I'm going to take 2 days off your total period. So what I mean by that is all these guys get taken off, and all of these, section here and here and all the way through, they're all in that one if statement in all conditions. So what I mean by all conditions is the pipe. So this is the or condition here. So if this is true, or this is true, or this is true, so on and so forth. Now if any of those are true, it's going to say, okay, I'm going to subtract 2 days off the total days period. Now, if any of those are not true, again, so if it's not greater than a week, and if all those conditions there are not met, it's going to fall back to my next if statement, and we're going to subtract 1 day. And again, same thing again, date diff, total days, start date, end date, plus 1. If it's equal to 6 and it's Monday, it's going to subtract 1 just down here. And that goes on and on for a long period of time, as you can see. I just found it easy to do this. I'm sure there's smarter people out there than me that could probably figure out a way of formatting this nicer, but hey, I haven't got enough time to figure out nicer ways of doing it. This was just an example. So now we've got subtract 1. Now we've got the final part, which is a little bit more curious. What if we don't need to do anything? We just know that it's Tuesday and you're going to have 4 days of working. You don't have to do anything because you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, no subtraction. So sometimes there's just no subtraction required. So what happens here is if we're not subtracting 2 days, we're not subtracting 1 day, we simply just, this is the else. If nothing else was true and this wasn't true, the false condition is, do you know what, just return me the total number of days. So once I've finally done that, I paste this into this function, I press update, I haven't changed anything obviously, and hopefully once that's all validated, there we go back to the preview, and we've got 1st of February, 5th of February. You can get rid of these now, we don't really need to see those. Business day between dates is 5. Now if I start to do something a little bit funkier, let's say collect the Monday, it's 6, because it's doing Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, skipping Saturday, skipping Sunday, and then including Monday, which is 6 days. And then so I could do something a little bit more clever, 7, 8, and then 12 is 10 days, and removing, so you can see here, difference of days is 12, the standard day diff is a bit different, it does 11, and then days between dates is 10. And then so I could do something pretty crazy, or let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hopefully if I click on 12 we see 30. There we go. So the difference here now is starting to really add up. The difference in days is 40, but the business days is actually 30. Hope that's useful to you. I know this is complicated, but certainly let me know how you went with the comment in the comments below. And if you've got any other suggestions, certainly reach out. Cheers.